Okay, this is VHDL Engineering 360, and this is Lab 2, Part 3. In Part 1, we created the EQ1 component, and we created a test harness for EQ1. In Part 2, we created EQ2, which was composed of two instantiations of EQ1, and then we created a test harness for EQ2, and then we simulated that. Well, we're feeling good that what we've done works. So after we've done all our simulations, now what I want to do is I want to burn EQ2 down to the FPGA. So you'll notice up above here, you've got simulation and you got implementation. The simulation radio button is pushed. Well, you need to push the implementation button. Now, kind of look at this window down here and notice that my test bench files are going to go away when I go into the implementation mode. All right, I hit implementation. Now all I have is I have my chip. 500E, I've got my EQ2 component, and EQ2 is made up of EQ1 and EQ1. So I have all those instances. They're both instances. So let's close all your files. And now here, what we see in the implementation mode is EQ2. Okay, there's my entity, 2 input. A is a 2-bit input, B is a 2-bit input, AEQ is a 1-bit output. I'm declaring a component. I'm instantiating 2 components, and then I'm ANDing the output of each one of those component instantiations. And then EQ1 was just our simple 1-bit input, 1-bit input, 1-bit output, and then we implemented the SOP expression using NAND gates. Now the only thing missing for me doing an implementation is the constraints file. So I need to say project, new source. Okay, I don't want test bench, I don't want module, I want where's my constraint file? Constraint. So I'm going to call that user constraints. Okay. And let's see, I do next. And what it did is it added a file uc.ucf. Okay. I'm going to edit that. Right now it's empty. Well, I happen to have one here already set up, ready to go. So what you want to do is copy and paste this in here. Or I'll copy and paste it. You're going to have to type it. Okay, let's get rid of some spaces here. Now look what we've got here. We've got that UCF here, and what we're doing is, since we're coupling that to EQ2, what I'm doing here is I am creating. Okay, at this point you've got that user constraints file, and what we're going to do is we're going to use 4 switches now, the L13, the L14, the H18, and the N17 switch. And I'm going to have the first 2 switches be the 2 bits of A0, A1. The next 2 switches be the 2 bits of B, B0, B1. And then I've only got one output on EQ2, and that's AEQB. So I'm going to map that variable to F12, which is one of the first LEDs. There's 7 more LEDs in there, but we're not going to use them. Okay, and we're actually using all 4 switches. I think we only have 4 switches on that guy, so all those are going to be used. So at that point, what you need to do is go back and make sure, highlight EQ1.VHD, make sure the check syntax is set, and then go up to EQ2, and then you'll pretty much go through everything there. You can right click and say rerun all and synthesize. Okay. You can open it up if you like, the node, and then have the console tab checked out. And we've got, let's see, the next thing is implement design. You can open up that. You can do them all at once or one at a time. I could say run translate. Or you could just right click on implement design and rerun all. Yeah, let's just do that. Sometimes you get out of sync, you can just say rerun all, so that'll actually rerun translate and then do map and place and route all in one shot. Thing to note is we're in the implementation mode. We're actually going to burn EQ2 down to the FPGA. EQ2 is made up of 2 instantiations of EQ1. We're basically just playing building block digital design. We get a bunch of good modules, we connect them all together, we got a nice digital system. Alright, so we got the implement design, we got the synthesize implement design. The next thing is generate programming file. Right click, rerun all, generate programming file. Alright, looks like we're still crunching here. Okay, so that's successful. So once we get these 3 checks, then what we can do is open up configure target device, and then what you want to go is manage configuration project, and that impact. Impact is the word you're looking for. Double click that guy. And when you double click that guy, you get this window, the impact window. Double click boundary scan, then right click in the right workspace, initialize chain. Alright, and it'll show you your FPGA and your 2 other chips. Do you want to continue and assign configuration files? Yes, I do. I want to put my bits that I just generated. This was lab 2, EQ2. Actually, I thought this was demo. Oh yeah, those are the bits I want, actually. And then, no, we're not going to do any proms here. We could actually burn our program to prom so that when we cycled power, it would load from prom, and then that would be like, you know, developing a complete embedded system. No. And then bypass on the other 2 chips. And then there's information. That first one, the 500, is your FPGA. This CF04 is your PROM, programmable read-only memory. And the third chip, the C2 C64, is a CPLD, complex programmable logic device, which is just a complicated form of a PLA or a PLA or PAL. Okay? Click OK, and at that point you right-click, program, and now you've written your bits down to the device. And if you were here, or I could show that on the screen, I've got a functioning 2-bit comparator where I'm using switches 1 through 4 as my input bits. Alright, so let's close this guy and save current. Nope, and go back and summarize what we did. Well, in the implementation mode, we had EQ2, which is a VHDL file, and it was composed of 2 instantiations of EQ1. Had a user constraints file to map my variables from my VHDL to actual hardware on the board. If you go and check the simulation radio button, you get a few more files. Test bench file. You've got EQ1. We did a test bench on EQ1. We did EQ2, which was made up of 2 EQ1s. Did a test bench on EQ2 to simulate that. And once we were confident, then we did the implementation. Notice in the simulation mode you see test bench files, but you don't see any user constraints file. That's an implementation issue. Implementation, you see the UCF because that's actually hardware you're implementing, but you don't see any test bench files because that's simulation. All right. So now you've done a lab that does both simulation and implementation. All right. I think that's good, and we are done. Enjoy.